Greetings and salutations in our dozens. It is I, Wolfotek, and here we are with another delightful video. And this time I actually remember to put my special microphone up so my voice is a little more deep and booming. Hopefully my voice is not horrifyingly cringe to the people who are watching this video. Whenever I see comments on various forums referencing my videos, the most common one I ever get is that people find my voice horrifyingly painful to listen to. Sorry, I am wired a little bit differently. I'm neuro-non-typical, and I literally cannot help how I sound. So, okay, this is the Codex for Necrons for Warhammer 40k or 40,000 9th edition. Yet again, the standard screaming front page. You have a little thing on the Necron faction. Contents, introduction. And then you have some beautiful artwork throughout this entire book. A little bit of history in search of immortality of the Necron faction. Relentless march. And so forth. Eldritch Artifice. Warzone Empothet Second. Tomb Worlds, and it teaches. This book basically shows you where all the major canon dynasties for the Necron Empire are, and it goes over the structure of Necron society and so forth, and then it goes through each dynasty in the Necron army that is canon. Now, this is an important moment to aside that these are the canon dynasties, and as a player in Warhammer 40k, you are capable of creating your own custom dynasty and picking from a set of protocols, custom protocols based around on whatever mechanic you want to decide how they woke up and stuff like that. A bit more into the history and culture of the Necrons. Them enslaving their Catan gods. And a bit more on each individual major Necron in the faction. So there you go. This book is loaded with beautiful artwork. I'm not going to show every single page, because I'm quite sure that Games Workshop might actually get a little upset if I show you everything. But you have beautiful displays of all the different common types of Necrons. You got some big displays of some other fun stuff. You got a section on rules and special rules and how to read them for the Necron Necron factions. Combat patrols. Patrol boxes are actually one of the best values. However, the Battle Force boxes that come out each December, I will keep reminding people in these videos that other than the starter boxes and the special verse faction boxes, the single best value for your army building is in the Battle Force boxes as well. So if you want to have the starter box for a faction, if you're new to Warhammer 40k, the next best option is the special starter verse boxes where you have two armies verse off with each other, and the Battle Force boxes. Those are your two best options. And then the step below that, the step below the verse boxes, the verse starter boxes and the Battle Force boxes, the next step below that would be combat patrols for the start collecting and the combat patrol boxes for 40k, and the Vanguard boxes and the start collecting boxes for Age of Sigmar. And then at the very bottom of the crap list the least valuable way, the least efficient way to collect your army is buying the newest model for that faction in the single packs. That is the least efficient way to build your army. And what you're going to say? Well, you're going to say if I buy the Battle Force, I get a bunch of extra warriors and scarabs, or I get a bunch of these extra ones. Well, that is not a bad thing. Depending on how the meta is flowing, it is not a terrible idea to have an extra 10 models of a type of unit. So if you have 10 more like warriors than you could ever field on the battlefield, you have extra warriors for in case you break some and you need to replace them quickly for a tournament. You could always paint them up in a different color scheme for a different dynasty or a different sub-faction in Warhammer 40k. You can always trade them off to people. Like there's this new box that came out. You don't have the money for it, but you just happen to have a bunch of like a bunch of Thousand Suns. You have a bunch of Thousand Sun models or a bunch of extra Necrons, and you know someone who needs a few more of this model to get it, and they happen to have that other model they don't want. You can trade back and forth like that. So there you go. Yet again, dynastic codes. Each dynasty has a special set of sub-rules that modify how they play in combat. You know, some dynasty can move faster than typical dynasties. Another dynasty has slightly more attack power. Another dynasty is slightly more accurate. Stuff like that. In the case of Warhammer 40k, I forget the dynasty, but the one that speeds up the movement rate of your Necrons is actually quite popular because one of the greatest weaknesses of the Necron army is the fact that they're slow on the foot. It takes them a while to get across the battlefield. But since that Games Workshop has decided to shrink the size of the table in which you play on, you can... Necrons are a little bit more viable now. And since they changed the points, a lot of people are now talking about how broken they are. You got various stratagems. You got any stratagem that ranges in 1 to multiple CP. CP stands for command points. You have a nice selection here. Some stratagems are exclusive to certain dynasties, while others are just universal. Some stratagems are specific to a type of unit. Then you have dynastic stratagems here, which are applied to the entire dynasty. You can always I do believe you can always field a mixture of dynasties. However, the mechanics of the Necrons favors you picking a specific dynasty. And if you mix your dynasties, your dynastic stratagems, and some stratagems will not apply across all your units. So there's a bit of a trade-off there. It goes over various other things, warlord traits and such. Dynastic warlord traits. The relics for the Necrons. Powers of the Catan. Your big kaiju. Your god kaiju for the Necrons. Catan are incredibly powerful against any faction that can only truly do damage in one phase. However, their power diminishes, effectiveness and power diminishes as a faction has greater range of attack across multiple phases. In Warhammer 40k, there's 3 phases of like the 6 or something like. There's like something like 9 phases or something like that. There is the Psyker phase, the charge phase, the combat phase, the move phase, is morale phase, etc., etc., etc. There's 3 phases in which your faction can effectively do damage in. They can do damage in the shooting phase, the combat phase, and the psyker phase. Now, some factions have abilities that, and some units have abilities to do damage in the charge phase as an effect. I love that. That's why I picked up the concept of that. I like that so much because I picked up Night Haunt, because they have some options in them and for Age of Sigmar that allow them to do damage on the charge. You have some units and factions that have ability to attack on do damage on the move phase, and then there's also other various features that can prompt damage occurring in other phases. But your three major phases for doing damage are the combat, the shooting, and the psyker phase. So the weakness to the Catan shards is that they have a limitation. They have a special rule that limits the amount of damage they can receive in a phase. So if you're fighting a faction that can only do damage shooting, really, or damage at combat, they last a long, long time, and they're really hard to take down quickly. If you're up against, say, like the Eldari, who are capable of dumping damage on your rear end, and in the psyker phase, and the shooting phase, and the combat phase, and in occasions on the charge phase, you could pull up your big-ass Catan shard, which could, against other factions, could literally last 5 rounds in normal games against other factions, and that the Eldari could just wipe out the Necron Catan shard in a single round. So, sorry about the whole ramble. Anyways, there's Crusade Rules, which is basically the story mode, campaign mode for Warhammer 40k. Requisitions, battle traits, etc., etc. Dynastic epithets. Necrons have this fun little thing where they have an epithet it's like a tag that you stick on there. They're like the Keeper of Light, the Grand Sunderer, the Ever Vengeful Tyrant of the Night, etc. Weapon enhancements for your Crusade rules. Crusade armies. Basically, Crusades are basically a campaign or an adventure for your army, and they can level up and gain better. They can improve their abilities and such and so forth. Then you have the data sheets for all the Necrons, or all the common Necrons. There are new Necrons models that do come out periodically that are not in this book. Same thing with any Warhammer 40k faction. Every so often, Games Workshop will literally just create a new model, and it's not in the book. But in the book, there's all the basic components and rules for running all your models, even the new ones that come out of nowhere. So you got all your Mancers. Each one of these symbols is basically fast attack, leader, except heavy artillery, healing, etc., etc. It actually explains that in the beginning, I do believe. The skull is the leadership. Yeah, it states that somewhere in here, or that what each symbol means. Basic standard, there is the name of the unit and the basic stats for it, the power rating on here. So you can use power or to determine how even your army is compared to your opponent. You can also use a point system, which then explains how your unit your total accumulation of points can also be used as a means of balancing your army against opponents. You have the various weapons that you can equip or have on you. Some models have like 2, 3, 4 different weapons on them, and some models literally only have 2 types of weapons on them at a time. And you have to choose between which 2, which is another reason why if you get like a bunch of warriors and you have twice as many warriors than you can field on the battlefield, you can always opt to give them a different weapon loadout, because Necron warriors come with 2 different weapons, but they can only equip one at a time. They got a Gauss Flare and a Gauss Reaper. The Gauss Flare has a greater range, but does less attacks in a round, where the Gauss Reaper has a shorter range, but you can fire it more times. So if you have more warriors, you can always have a second group that has nothing but Gauss Reapers and Gauss Flares. You got Lich Guard. These are more or less like special units. And then you have your Catan Shards. Fast attack. And you have a nice variety of building out your faction. The Silent King, the big boss. And then you have a section on weapon profiles, explaining, comparatively allowing you to see all the weapons that they have and being able to quickly reference between them. And then you got melee weapons section. You got point values for the faction. The point values are not on the data sheets. They're back here in another set of pages, because it doesn't really matter too much if they're not on the actual data card, because these numbers change and it tells you how many points are tied to the unit size. So there you go. And different loadouts. So like if you say have a Overlord and you have a Resurrection Orb on him, you have X amount of points for the Overlord by one model, and then there is the various options you add to said Overlord, and you add those numbers on to the Overlord. However, some items are either or. You can't have more than one type of weapon. So there you go. And then you have a little glossary in the back explaining common terminology. And then you have a reference section telling you basic rules and where to look at, what page to look for the deeper explanation on those rules. And I'm not going to show that because that's actually the code for the book. On the very back panel of the book, there will typically be a code right here that you can use to enter into a Warhammer app, and you get this book on the Warhammer app. So there you go. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and I hope you have a delightful day, and a wonderful week and a magnificent month, and see you next time.